Hi all, it's Joanne Frazier again talking to you about the second part of Chapter 8, Boone and Kurtz Human Resource Management, and this section is on motivating employees. It's kind of funny, but many managers don't really realize the importance of motivating people. They think you have your job, get to work, do it, and go home. But the reality is that we're all human beings and we have emotions and feelings, and morale, feeling positive about your job is very important in terms of getting people to actually do a good job and to feel as if they belong and to feel as if they're contributing to an organization. But in order to have high morale, managers have to pay attention to people's needs. And when they don't, morale goes down. So morale and motivation can be impacted in a lot of different ways, and one is extrinsically, and I will ask these two on a test, by the way. Extrinsic means things like from the outside: pay, benefits, praise. Intrinsic is from the inside, the pride and achievement that we might feel when we do something, when we accomplish something, or when we achieve a certain level. And one of the first management theorists to talk about this was Maslow. And Maslow has a hierarchy of needs. And what he says in motivation theory is that we have this hierarchy of needs that needs to be satisfied, and you cannot be satisfied if your lower level needs are not met. So if you look at this list, you can look first here where I'm pointing to physiological needs. So if we are hungry, if we have not slept, we cannot be worried about our social needs. We are only focusing on our physiological needs. And that's one reason why Head Start programs, where they provide lunches and breakfasts and take-home food for kids who don't have enough to eat, is really important, because if you get to school and you don't have any food, you can't really think about your studying. The next is safety needs. So we are nourished, we're, warm, we have those kinds of things, but now safety. And safety can come in a lot of different ways. One, it can be having a physical safety, getting to and from work, not feeling threatened, that kind of safety, but it can also be worry about losing your job. So those are safety needs. So once those are met and we feel fairly competent there, then we start to think about our social needs. So social needs are the belongingness needs, the need to belong to a group. And probably many of you who have had jobs have gone to your job on the first day and not been part of the group. And people were nice to you, but maybe they all went out to lunch and they didn't invite you, or they were sitting and talking in the coffee room and not trying to exclude you, but not necessarily including you. So we have this need to belong to groups. Once we have that feeling of belongingness, then we can start to get to our esteem needs. So our pride, how we feel about doing a job well done. And then finally, self-actualization is a place where people are when they actually start thinking about, where do I really want to be? What do I want to do to be self-actualized, to be happy about where I am? And usually that happens later in life, when you get older and you start thinking more about the things that you want to do instead of the things that you have to do. There's another theorist called Hertzberg, and Hertzberg has what he calls a two-factor model of motivation. And it's hygiene factors and motivator factors. And when I was in graduate school, we used to call them motivation and maintenance. So the maintenance part was the hygiene factors. And what Hertzberg said is, before we can feel motivated, we need to have certain extrinsic satisfactions. We need to feel that we're being paid enough. We need to feel that our job environment is decent, that we can do our job. And by the way, you don't have to have all of these feelings, but just the ones that are important to you. Maybe your particular status at your job, or the working conditions, or your relationships with people, the way you relate to your supervisor, the company policies. All of these are hygiene factors. And if they don't fit, if we don't have satisfaction there, it's very hard to move to the next column where we're talking about motivator factors. So once we feel like, well, I wish I was making more money, but I'm doing okay, I can feed myself and take care of my family, that's when the motivator factors, the intrinsic factors like achievement, what have I accomplished? Have I been recognized by people within the organization? Do I have the opportunity to advance or to grow? What are my responsibilities? So Hertzberg says that we have to meet the hygiene factors before we can really be motivated. Victor Vroom is another management theorist, and he talks about the expectancy theory and the equity theory. So expectancy is actually just what it sounds like. It describes this process where, I'm just reading this now, where people actually evaluate what the desired result would be and decide whether the effort that they need to put forward is worth it. So if I stay until 7:30 every night and I work late, then I might get a promotion. Well, if I will get a promotion, then I might be motivated to do that. If I might get a promotion, then I might not be. If my expectation is that I might do all that work and not get promoted, then I might not do the extra work. Similarly, there is an equity theory, and the equity theory says that I expect to be treated like other people. So if I am treated in an equitable way, if you ask me to do extra work, then you will ask others in my similar position to do extra work. Then we'll both have the same rewards and will same treatment. So those are two different types of motivation theory that Victor Vroom talked about. We also have goal setting theory, and by now you probably know that I'm big into setting goals, and earlier in the semester we talked about our SMART goals. And the idea behind goals is that if people understand what their goals are, they are responsible to achieve, then if those goals are specific, so over here specific, if the difficulty level is something that I can actually attain, if there is a measurement so do I know whether or not I can actually meet that goal, and do I accept it, then it allows me to work towards my goals and know where I am as the process moves on. In the 1980s, we talked a lot about something called MBO, management by objective, and that was something that management theorist Peter Drucker introduced. And basically it goes along with goal setting theory in that the goals of individuals are tied to the goals of the corporation. So it takes the goal setting theory to the next level and says, well, if you're a salesperson and the company has to improve sales by 10% overall, then your sales should be tied to that in some way. And it helps the organization and the individual employees to be working towards the same goal. So I personally really like that, and that's probably mostly because I grew up with it in my MBA program. Other ways that people can feel motivated are just through their job design. Do they want additional responsibilities? That's called job enlargement. Do they want to learn new skills? That's called job enrichment. Or do they actually want to try other jobs within the organization? My husband worked as a sales manager for a company, and he moved around he worked in customer service for a month, he worked over in the production department for a month. So in that way he could learn the jobs that were going on within the organization and actually be more sensitive to them. And in some cases people might decide that they want to move to different positions. One other thing that we have to talk about in terms of motivation are the assumptions that people make. And we have what we call theory X and theory Y. So managers who are theory X managers assume that employees just don't like to work. And those managers believe that they have to coerce or push their employees to do their jobs. Doesn't sound very fun to me. Theory Y managers are managers who believe that people actually like to work and they actually want to have more responsibility and they want to contribute. So they treat their employees with more respect and expect them to be successful. After those theories, someone named William Ochi came up with Theory Z, and Ochi was from Japan, and he saw that in the Japanese work culture that there is more involvement in teams, and there is more productivity that comes when people work together and work in teams. So he focuses on this idea that workers should be involved in their work, they should participate, and when they are, it improves the quality of the product and the work life for the employee and for the company. A couple last things that we need to talk about are labor relations. So in the 1930s, or let's step back a little bit to the Industrial Revolution. So we went from having our own farms where we worked hard in this agrarian culture to the Industrial Revolution, and all of a sudden there were machines and we were manufacturing and we were working for other people, and captains of industry came in and they started working people harder and harder and doing labor studies, time studies to make sure that people were as efficient as they could be, and oftentimes they didn't really care that much about the workers themselves. They were more involved in the productivity issues. So what came out of that is a rise of labor unions, and labor unions are when groups of workers band together and they have common goals and they work together to ask management, or in some ways force management, to improve the quality of their wages, their hours, their working conditions. Labor managers or labor unions are local, national, international. Right now, about 12% of the nation's workforce belongs to labor unions and about a third of government workers. I'm actually a part of the AAUP, so the faculty, full-time and part-time, we each have our own labor union at the college. And so the unions negotiate for us. They help us to get higher wages and better benefits and those kinds of things. And they use the power of this critical mass of people to negotiate. So we started out with these labor unions, and there were a lot of bad things that happened in companies tried to break the unions, and they did all kinds of dangerous and bad things. And so laws came to be. So the first one that's really important here is the National Labor Relations Act. And that essentially legalized collective bargaining. That's what negotiating is, collective bargaining, and required employees to negotiate with the union representatives, because in some places they just said, we're not talking to you. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 came in and said, you know what, we really need to have a minimum wage because not everybody is paying a fair wage. So that came into law, and it also outlawed child labor. So that was very important and continues to be important. Then following, Taft-Hartley talked about unions' power, that they limiting unions so that they would not do things that were unfair in terms of coercing people to join the union, and telling employers that they couldn't discriminate against union workers. And And the last one just here on our list is the Landrum-Griffin Act. And that actually was just, the idea was that to promote honesty and democracy and running the union's internal affairs so that they wouldn't just be one person makes all of the decisions, and it's again not part of the collective process. So collective bargaining can involve anything and does involve anything from wages, work hours, benefits, how the union activities are taken care of and the responsibilities. If there's a grievance, so if somebody has a complaint, it's called a grievance, and how that is handled. What happens with layoffs? Are people laid off in terms of seniority, or are there other methods? So all of those things need to be written down and agreed to by the union and the management. And so just in terms of settling disputes, typically there's somebody called a shop steward or the union worker who would meet with the union representative who would meet with the worker who has a complaint, and they would talk to them, and the shop steward or union representative would look at the company rules, make sure that the grievance is meaningful, talk to management, and they have a different levels of the process. So, it might go to mediation or arbitration. So you can look up those terms to see specifically what they mean. Finally, the last couple of slides, we just talk about tactics that unions use. And unions are really kind of going out of favor now. We are much less focused on manufacturing and more on service environment. And so that has something to do with it. And so the unions just aren't as strong. But unions can do things like go on strike. So it's a temporary stoppage of work where people just say, we're not going to go to work until you sign the contract, managers. Or they can picket. They can go on strike and picket in front of the company with some kind of a protest, and hopefully I see pickets every once in a while at giant grocery stores, or I used to see them on a fairly regular basis. And when they were negotiating contracts, and people wouldn't want to do what's calling cross the picket line. So it would hurt the store's ability to do work or to sell their products, or it would hurt their public image. Sometimes unions will try to organize a boycott where people stop buying certain products from a company. And on the other side, on the management side, one of the things that managers can do when things get really bad is something called a lockout, which is almost like a strike on the management side, saying to the union members, well, if you're not going to come to work, we're just going to close the company down. And businesses have actually done that. They've actually closed the business, started up under another name. Now it's not unionized anymore, and the whole process starts again. So hopefully somewhere there's a happy medium to all of this. So again, labor unions are not as important as they were. They still play a role, but also the laws have become better and more aggressive, and I think in some ways have more of a focus on the ethical side of running the business. And so that's what's happening. Again, we still have unions and they will still play a role, but it's not as involved as it used to be. So that's it. Thank you.